All right, folks, let's get into it. Another nice new edition of Celtics Beat. Adam Kaufman, Evan Valenti, you're used to us, and a good friend of the program we haven't had back in a little while. Let's have him, Jared Weiss from The Athletic, an international man of mystery. I think I say that based only on his Instagram feed, which I'll be honest, as a guy who he covers the NBA, and so I'm used to when he posts about the NBA. But the Instagram channel, Jared, it's way different. I look at the stories. I don't know what's going on. I feel very uncultured.
It's all photoshopped. It's all CGI.
Yeah, not even really there.
What have you been up to since since the season ended? What's your summer been like?
I've been home for about 3 weeks since June. Basically, I just after the pandemic was over and we had, well, I shouldn't say
wait, it's over.
Pandemic was taking a little bit of a pause where we were allowed to go places again.
Yeah.
I was like, screw it, season's over. I am going to leave the house for the first time in a year and a half. So I haven't really been home ever since, and it's been pretty great.
What have you been doing?
Did LA for a month, which was fun and exhausting. New York, Vegas for summer league, and then Europe for about 3 weeks or so.
Man, what was the highlight then of all that?
Highlight of that, probably Positano on the Amalfi Coast. That's been like my dream to go there my entire life, and it's actually better than you think it would be, which seems impossible, but it really was incredible.
Now, when you're going away for, multiple weeks at a time, or like you said, LA for a month, are you going with people to these places, or are you going to places where you know people? What's the vacation approach for you?
Yeah, I know people in all these places. Positano was actually just coincidentally my friends showed up at the same time as I was there on their honeymoon, so that worked out pretty.
As one does, sure.
Yeah, of course, right? But yeah, no, I know I was in Paris, so I have friends in Paris, London. I have a bunch of friends in London, so I tend to go places where I know people, so I have something to do. Because traveling by yourself, it's fun and that you have the freedom, but it also gets very lonely at the same time if you trying to go do stuff and you don't know anybody there, So I always try to go places where I know people.
Well, I know you've been go ahead, Evan.
Well, I'm just saying I'm a big fan of, like, if you have friends in certain places, they can show you the non-touristy stuff.
Yeah, and couches to crash on.
Right. That's the best part of traveling, is like when you can experience the real culture of whatever place you're traveling to. It's a way better experience, and from my expertise, quote unquote. But it's just so much stuff. There's like the tourist stuff that you have to do. There's like the underground stuff that only the locals know, and that's where the real stuff really is. So
I have friends, maybe they're just cheap, but they'll only go to places that they know people, so they can just crash on the couch. Like no hotel
most of the time.
Yeah. Hey, look, we're all on a media salary, right? Other than Evan, who's out there, selling the finest of fine clothing.
Yeah, look, man. Although, look, business is great right now because people haven't been able to do anything like travel for a year and a half, 2 years. So now everybody's buying stuff that they haven't bought in a year and a half. And again, here's my plea for all of you. If you need clothing, like tailored clothing, please shop like 3 weeks at a time, 4 weeks at a time. It just makes our lives a lot easier. So it's just my little simple plea for everybody out there who needs to buy things. Like, just help us out. That's all it matters.
I respect that. That wasn't even a plug for your personal store either. It was
it's the whole industry
to the business.
Whole industry. Like, I have friends all over the state in terms of working in men's stores, and like, again, everybody, like, some people tell you 8 weeks, where I'm like, that's maybe not so necessary, but like 4 weeks, 3 weeks is a good number, guys. Just to again, plead for anybody with a clothing business out there. It just makes life a lot easier.
Well, all right. So Jared, you've been traveling plenty. You've been out of touch for a couple months. Let's catch you up. Danny Ainge retired. Okay.
No.
I know. Caught a lot of people.
I assume, right?
Oh, wait, hold on to your seatbelt here.
Yeah, if that one floors you, you're never gonna guess who they replaced him with. Brad Stevens. Yeah, no, I know. It makes you want to throw things, doesn't it? No, Mike Zarin, he's still there though. For anyone thought there'd be like a tiff and he'd leave and go be the GM. Nope, he's working under Brad. There have been many moves since. Let's see, Al Horford's back, Kemba Walker's back.
He re-signed Fournier, I'm sure, obviously.
Or pardon me, Enes Kanter's back. I think I said Kemba Walker. He's gone. Nope. Evan Fournier, he actually got a bigger. See, he performed well at the Olympics, so he was able to get some big money from the Knicks, which connecting a few dots. Kemba went there too. So the whole I'm going to New York thing, he finally did it. No Oklahoma City. He was able to bypass that. What a
He
year
didn't
for
get bought
Kemba.
out. Obviously, the Knicks traded for his full salary. I mean,
Naturally, yeah. I mean,
course.
because that's how organizations like that run. They say if we can pay this guy the full freight, we're going to do it. No, he got what 8 million over what per year, I think it was, if I remember right. Evan, is that correct?
Somewhere
Which I
between
think
10. Yeah.
yeah, we'd all like to have Kemba Walker at $8 million. But no, I know you're aware of obviously what's gone on this offseason, and we've talked a little bit about it in the past and just how crazy it is. So the latest deal, obviously, that again, jokes aside, I know you're aware of, but it happened as we were recording a week ago with Chris Forsberg, and that was the Juancho Hernangomez arrival, and Chris Dunn is gone, Carson Edwards is gone, and so I think one of the biggest things Celtics fans are wondering, it was always a question with Danny Ainge at the helm, and now seemingly with Brad as well, with the way this offseason has gone. Training camp's not far away. I mean, it's rapidly approaching. Preseason games are not far away. Jared, is this the roster, or are there more changes potentially to come before we get to the season?
Probably just about the roster. It's actually funny. I actually did not know about the Wancho trade until like 2 days ago because I completely unplugged. Like
That's good,
I turned
though.
off everything while I was on vacation. But so I don't think Wancho is going to get moved again. He's just making too much money. He's already been traded twice in the last couple of weeks, right? So the really, I think the inflection point for the roster is going to come at that 15th spot, which is, do they end up cutting Jabari Parker? Do they end up dumping Bruno Fernandez and picking up somebody else who gets cut loose from another roster in training camp that they like? Otherwise, I just can't imagine any more changes unless there is like a Ben Simmons trade or a John Wall trade or something like that, where they can jump in as a third team and they can pick up some sort of piece of that deal as a facilitator.
This is kind of a dumb question, but it's a perfect fan question, because I saw some of this on social media, and I look, as a fan, I experienced some of it as well. Not to say the moves were bad. I think generally Brad has made all good moves since he took over. But is there any part of you, just as a spectator of the sport, that is a little disappointing that you won't see either a Moses Brown or a Chris Dunn in a Boston uniform, just because you're kind of excited about, but the potential of how they might have been used?
Not really. I mean, when they
Okay, good.
when they traded for both those guys, I thought they were probably going to get moved again. I mean, I
Yeah.
was hearing right away that both of them were probably going to get rerouted at some point. And I mean, Chris Dunn, I'm a defense guy, so I love watching Chris Dunn play defense. And even last year when he came back and was still moving as like a shell of himself, he was still really fun to watch defend. He drapes guys. He's so aggressive. It's really fun to watch. But they got too many guards like Romeo Langford and Aaron Nesmith and Peyton Pritchard, who they need to give those minutes to, who, are just going to be a more effective player. So I didn't really think Dunn was going to stick around. And if he did, he would be as like the 15th man. And then Moses Brown, that game he had against the Celtics was awesome. That game he had against the Clippers, who were like as close to point shaving as we've seen in an NBA game in that final game of the year last year. Like they looked like they were trying to deliberately lose that game. He went off and that was fun. But like you watch some of the tape of him and he's just all over the place, and he's a fun player, and I think he'll stick around in the league for a little bit. But like he's a much bigger project than I think they have patience for right now, and that was clearly answered for when they signed Enes Kanter, who is like at the opposite end of his career development path.
Yeah, I mean, I think this team is pretty much finalized at this point, and looking at all the roster moves and all the things that have moved out, moved in, et cetera, the way this team looks like on paper, it looks like a team that has a little more veteran, leadership top to bottom. They don't have a lot of those guys under the bench that you're hoping, catch fire some night with Carson Edwards or Tremont Waters, or having Taco on the team. Like all those guys are pretty much shipped out. Grant Williams maybe being the only, truly somewhat developmental player there. I mean, Romeo obviously is another guy, but he's got to stay healthy. But this team looks, to me, Jared, slightly more professional. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the big gripes from people like, oh, in part of my favorite discourse is like, oh yeah, if we had so-and-so at the end of the bench instead of Carson Edwards, like, well, yeah, that guy's probably not going to get a ton of playing time, but if he does, it's good to have a guy that's been there, done that, knows his role, isn't trying to stat hunt, and was just trying to help his team out a little bit more. Do you think this team has improved, somewhat significantly, somewhere in between, hasn't improved at all between the end of last season and the beginning of training camp here?
He wants to know whether to bet the over or the under. That's what it is.
Oh, over. Life's too short to bet the under, Adam. Let's just get that for one thing.
What's their over under right now?
Was it
I think 40? No. What'd you say?
The wins, wasn't it like 53.5 or something?
No, it's like 46.
Stop that. I'm gonna look it up. I'm going to bet on
3.5 would make them like the 3 seed.
It's like 50 wins. No way. I wouldn't even touch it. I would then bet the under. 45. I would go under for that.
I'll let Jared answer your question while I look this up. I could have sworn it was higher than that.
Yeah, I think I would take the over on 46 wins if that's where it is.
I'd pound the over.
Tight. Okay.
What is it?
I'm looking. Hang on.
Oh, is it pound? I thought you said you found the over.
No. I said I would pound the over if it was 46 wins.
So, I mean, they're better than they were where they left off last year. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. Fournier, I think
46.
46.
46.
Okay. So,
Over.
like Fournier, I think is a fine signing for New York. I think the Celtics are probably right to not pay him that much. But he did not play well in Boston last year. His defense was a mess. He was playing in COVID fog, it seemed like, the entire time. He can be a lot better this year than he was from what the Celtics got from him. But honestly, I don't know how much dramatically better his defense would have gotten. And his defense was a huge problem. And Kemba Walker's defense was really bad last year, too. He wasn't able to do the stuff that I thought made him actually a solid defender for his role when he first got to Boston. And so switching that out with guys like Josh Richardson, with Dennis Schroder can definitely be a really good defender when he wants to, for sure. Not Enes Kanter, but Al Horford. It's like they got way more balanced, and this team was just very out of balance last year, and obviously relied on their 2 stars to carry them way too much, and that's why the team was so erratic. They just seem like they're a team that has more 2-way guys in the rotation, which is obvious because they brought in a bunch of solid 2-way vets. And they have guys that just know what to do with the ball when it gets to them. I mean, they just had so many lineups out there last year where when the ball would swing to a guy wasn't comfortable shooting it, didn't really know how to put it on the floor and keep the play going. And they're going to solve a lot of those problems by just having smarter vets who know what they're doing. And so that should make a pretty big difference for them. It's just that like their talent ceiling still seems low compared to obviously like the top 3 teams in the East. Miami seems like they've definitely gotten better. Atlanta, I assume, is not going to be an Eastern Conference Finals team again, but they're probably still going to be pretty good considering how young their guys are and how injured they were last year. So there's still a lot of teams for them to try to climb past, and that's why getting that many more that wins than 46 seems pretty unlikely unless like Time Lord is all of a sudden an offensive creator, which obviously add a new dimension to them.
So where do you rank them in the East right now? I know that, it's a popular thing, obviously, for pundits, especially with the season right around the corner. We were talking last week or the week before about Bobby Marks. He has them top 4 in whatever the order, but top 4 in the East. Evan was mentioning, I think Zach Lowe. Forgive me, Zach, if I know you're out there listening if I say this incorrectly. I think Zach has him 6th in the East, the Celtics. Where do you put them right now?
Yeah, they're in that mid-tier mix with Miami is probably at the top of that list, and then I think Atlanta is probably pretty close to that, and then New York and maybe Charlotte actually does make another step forward this year and they get in there. So I think they're probably somewhere in that mix, kind of right between where Miami and Atlanta probably are and where Charlotte and New York are.
We may as well talk about a guy who's been talking a lot about money, at least through social media and making jokes and having fun. And that is Dennis Schroder. We've talked about him on the show quite a bit in the past and just wondering really how is his personality going to jive with this team, especially being really the one guy who's got a big contract question, who's, looking for kind of a redemptive season in a way, a prove it deal, short-term money, just around $6 million after turning down north of 20 mil per over 4 from the Lakers. He's making jokes on his Instagram about fumbling the bag. He's inviting other people, get your memes in now before we get back to business. He's certainly, really ingratiating himself in with the Celtics fans, Celtics culture. He's letting people vote on what number he's going to wear this season. How do you think the fit's going to be for this guy?
I mean, he was already on a contending team looking to earn the bag last year. We saw how that went. So I assume it's going to be relatively similar this year. Maybe he's learned some lessons and he's going to try to enhance his reputation around the league. I mean, I talked to some Lakers people, and they thought that the whole idea of him being an issue within the locker room is overblown, and that he seemed to be pretty well liked and things like that. So I don't really know exactly what the real story is there, but I mean, the guy definitely is going to make plays. That's for sure. I think the question is going to be like, how much is him as a creator going to be like stat padding and trying to make flashy plays as much as like him trying to be a responsible part of the offense. I think what's good for him in this situation is that I don't know how much it matters. Like the team was just so desperate last year to have anyone that could just really do anything aside from their core creators. And he's probably going to have a decent amount of latitude to just kind of go out there when probably both Brown and Tatum are on the bench and just kind of like do his thing and try to just run around and create shots. And I think he's going to probably relish that.
Obviously, health and COVID's entirely unpredictable, but injuries, that sort of thing, again, you can't predict those. All of that stuff, removing that from the equation if possible, because things are going to pop up. They always do. Hopefully nothing too serious, but you never know, especially looking at what happened with this team last year, where they were more afflicted and affected by COVID than any other team, and man games lost and all of that. But do you think in terms of, we know how Brad coached. We're going to find out how Ime Udoka coaches and what his strategy is. Do you think that in his ideal world, he's going to have, this is my starting five, and Schroder, whether he's part of it or he's coming off the bench, this is how we want our rotation to look? Or do you think he's going to be kind of a mix and match guy as he figures it out along the way, and this could be one of those years where, half of Schroder's games he's starting, the other half he's coming off the bench?
I don't think Schroeder's the guy that's going to have that flexibility. I think it's going to be Josh Richardson and Al Horford for the most part. Just personnel matchup wise, it's like it's not. They don't need another point guard out there. I think they want Smart to be the point guard as much as they can because, well, I mean, we'll see how it goes. But I think Smart functions better offensively as a point guard than he does as an off-ball guard, where like you can play to his strengths more. You can allow him to try to get downhill and be a playmaker more and be less of a shooter off the catch attacker from the wing, which isn't really his originally natural position and doesn't fit his skill set as well. So I think if you put Schroeder out there, then that forces Smart to be the player that you don't really necessarily want him to be. And that's why having Richardson makes more sense, especially because of Richardson's defensive versatility. And then obviously we know Horford and what Horford does. So I just don't think Schroeder's going to get a lot of opportunity to start. And I'm pretty sure he signed knowing that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Is it difficult, real quick, because we talked about this a little bit with Forsberg last week, is it then difficult for him to sort of, make up for money lost, to recoup so much of that contract that he had turned down with the Lakers, if he's really embracing a bench role and fitting in his best again and being a good soldier, being a good teammate, all those things that you had talked about? But if the numbers aren't there, if the volume, the stats aren't there, is that going to hurt him, or is he just got to, sort of live and learn and move on?
No, he needs to have like that Reggie Jackson moment. That's what this is for him, who went through a similar phase in his career that was more injury than what Schroeder's going through. But Schroeder has already demonstrated his ability to fill with volume. Last year, his 3-point shooting really fell off. The volume of 3-point shooting and the efficiency fell off. He needs to demonstrate that he can come over screens and be a knockdown shooter, or knockdown shooter, I should say. But he just really, more than anything, just needs to show that he can be an important part of winning culture and get those rave reviews from the team that will make teams think that he can be that guy for their culture to really drive winning. I think that was what kind of killed him with the market. I also just think that they just misread the market and just didn't shake out his direction anyway. But for him, he doesn't need to average 19 points a game. He needs to have like a 50-40-90 shooting split kind of thing and like be a good defender and be talked about as an important part of the defensive culture for the team and all the things that made him such a tantalizing prospect a few years ago. Because what's good for him is he is 28, I think, at this point, right? Like he's entering his prime, or like he's in that prime. So like he can have a good year and a team can still give him a good 4-year deal. Like he's not going to recruit. He's probably not going to get an offer that was there for him last time, but he could certainly get, I could see him having a good year and getting somewhere between 13 to 15 million a year.
What if you get that Fournier money that Fournier just got, 17, 18, maybe, but again, as you said, you're gonna have to move on to this point and, playing within a structure, playing well within such structure, being a good teammate can help that. Cause teams are gonna have money at the end of the year. They're gonna, somebody's gonna overpay somebody. It might be Dennis Schroder. You never know. It just depends on, your situation. I think what's going to be important for Schroder is to understand the situation he's in, to understand that if he's effective and can be a good distributor as well as an efficient scorer, that's going to bode well for his next contract. Because again, teams are always looking for, some sort of creation. And if it comes from that spot, that's fantastic. But shot creation in the NBA is huge. And if he can definitely provide that, and if he does it in an efficient way, in a good environment, that'll go a long way. I guess my concern with Schroder, and again, his personality seems like it's fun. He's a skateboarder, like he's doing kick flips in some underground like skate park. I love that.
I'm sure the front office loves to see him do it.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm sure they do. It's an ACL tear waiting to happen there. But that's cool. I like, he's making jokes about fumbling the bag, similar to Doug Gottlieb yesterday, poking holes at himself and why he wasn't asked to be a part of the Notre Dame credit card platform program thing going on, which I thought was fantastic. Good job of leaning into that finally by Doug. But the thing that I'm most worried about, Jared, is potentially stunting the development of our favorite I guess how do I put this? New faces Celtics in terms of Peyton Pritchard, because I just enjoyed the hell out of watching him last year, and his summer is only up the ante for me with the 90 points pro-am game where he got in a plane, left to go drop 90 in a pro-am, then dropped 50 the next game, then came back and got locked down by Davion Mitchell.
He was playing against the three of us, keep in mind, but nevertheless,
hey, look, 92 points, man. You got to get shots up. I loved what I saw from him last year. He looked so ready for just the NBA speed, and he didn't seem like he was fazed by a lot of things. And I just want to see the next step of that. And Schroder comes in, who's more polished and more of a veteran presence, and can definitely steal some minutes from him. So I guess my concern is over like that. The point guard distribution, how many minutes go to this guy, and this guy. I think, out of the three, Peyton could be, I guess, an off-ball shooter, I think, better than the rest, because his three-point shot is just much better than everybody else's. But I do want to see him as a point guard, because he does have that skill as well. Are you concerned about distributing the minutes between the three guys, Smart, Schroder, and Pritchard kind of being on the odd man out here?
I just think that like all the young guys all got literally all of them had a veteran stuck in front of them on the depth chart. So this is just the issue for all of them. And I guess that's fine, because did anyone enjoy watching them develop last year? I mean, I guess there were certainly plenty of times where it was fun watching Pritchard have those good nights, but the team was not fun to watch most of the time. And I think the team will be a lot more aesthetically pleasing to watch this year. And you'll probably get little doses of the development for those guys along the way, as it's kind of supposed to be. I think what's good for Pritchard is that he should complement Schroeder decently, because he can defend up on the two most of the time. So he can handle that slightly bigger guy enough. And he is probably honestly best slated as an off-ball guard for most of his career. I think he's best off as kind of like what his role will be that two who can certainly run pick and roll for you, but he's not going to be the guy bringing the ball down the court every single time. And I think it's just because he's just not that explosive off the dribble. And what's good for him is that it seems like his pull-up three-point game is coming along a little bit better. So if you're not going to destroy guys going over screens as a point guard, you at least need to threaten teams that you're going to pull up and shoot from 30 feet out, and that at least makes you viable. And it seems like that could be a part of his game. But of course, keep in mind that while he's only in his second year, he also is almost 24 at this point. He's got to be close to that at this point. So he is a relatively old rookie. So I would expect him to continue to improve into his fourth year, but I don't know if he's going to make a big leap after year 4. So I don't see like a huge horizon for his development curve just because of his age. Like he'll be entering his prime almost at that point. So I think that the Schroeder thing is good for him because I guess Schroeder is not that different from Kemba Walker, but it's another veteran point guard who's really crafty getting to the hoop, who can help him learn more skills to become that kind of guy. Because Pritchard's major weakness is just getting to the rim. Like he can't really drive into an NBA defense, and when he does, his main go-to move is to pick up his dribble and pivot his way to like an off-balance layup, and that doesn't work against like most good defenses in the NBA. But he's just crafty and tough enough to make it work.
We'll get back to some of our questions and, of course, your Twitter questions in just a moment. But one more break. Want to tell you about, If you're listening, this won't help you. If you're watching, you can see that Evan and I, we've got the matching sweatshirts on, a great company we talked a little bit about last week as well. And it's the Legends brand. This show powered in part by Legends brand, an athlete-owned apparel brand that is popping up seemingly everywhere these days, including many pro locker rooms and on some of today's top athletes. Legends is owned in part by athletes like Steve Nash, the Nets head coach, Matt Barnes, Baker Mayfield, NFL legend and local hero Willie McGinnis, even former Celtic Marcus Morris Sr., among many others. And Legends makes the high-performance apparel with style and comfort you will want to wear all day, and I'm not just saying that. This is so incredibly comfortable, this sweatshirt. Evan wears it every single day. I mean, literally every day, anytime that I see him on Zoom, anytime I see him posting pictures on social media, he is wearing that sweatshirt. I don't know if he's even washed it yet. He wears it all the time, though, and I'm just snug like a glove, man. This is good. It's a go-to hoodie around here, and I'm especially, again, this is, if you're watching, I'm partial to the high neck, to
Great.
I don't, I mean, you work in fashion. What's the name for like the raised neck as opposed to the traditional, whatever
So
the
like,
most.
instead of like having like a crew neck sweater or a hoodie who's maybe like a deeper V or whatever you want to go, this has like a sort of a turtleneck sort of feature to it. And it's just like, it is wonderful to have. Like, look, as Adam explained, I wear this every day. I just got a puppy, and when I walk the puppy at 2:00 in the morning, or take her out 2:30, 3:00 in the morning, and then at like 6 in the morning, like, folks, it's cold out. I need something with a little bit of girth to it, a little bit of weight to it, and this is perfect. It goes on real quick. Take her downstairs, get her outside. I feel warm as hell. I got my slippers on, I got my joggers on, and I have this on. Life's good. I could be out there all day. Sometimes it takes her a while, sometimes it doesn't. But whether it does or doesn't, I'm warm and comfy as I possibly could be for someone waking up at 3:00 in the morning trying to take his dog out to go to the bathroom. So, it's not the worst thing in the world to be, dressed like this and have this easily accessible right on my nightstand, so I can just throw it on quick, grab her, and go. It's great. Trust me. I at first I was like, it's a hoodie. What's different about it? There's a few things about it: comfort, fit, style. All A+ from this guy.
It's not baggy. It's snug, but in a good way. Like it's fitting. It's a fitting, and you don't come across the fitted sweatshirts often. I like it. I'm gonna wear it around a lot. Evan doesn't even take it off when he gets back into bed after taking the dog out, because
sometimes I don't. That's real.
It's like wearing pajamas. I'm telling you, except stylish. Visit legends.com today and see why the athletes everywhere are swapping out their big box brands for Legends apparel. Use our promo code, that is BEAT, BEAT 20, BEAT 20, and that is the number 20, BEAT 20. Save 20% on your first order. Again, that is legends.com, promo code BEAT 20. Offer ends October 10th. All right. You got a few more weeks to take advantage. Make sure that you do. Did we sell you on this, Jared?
Oh, I already bought 10 pairs while you were doing the reissue.
Just while we were talking, huh? Good on you. You make room in the closet, my friend. All right, let's get back to we'll do some Twitter questions in a moment, but we'll talk a little bit more, obviously, about this team. Something that I know you and Evan were talking a little bit about. We've gotten into it just a little bit. We haven't really taken a deep dive, though, in previous shows. Something that the players, coaches, executives themselves have been asked about as well at certain points in time during this offseason. And that's Al Horford with his return, Rob Williams after getting his bag, and he is this team's starting center. He damn well better be. Can they coexist on the floor at the same time?
Yeah, I think that anybody who was watching the double big Celtics early in the year and they were thinking, this is what I love about NBA basketball, congratulations, you're going to see more of it, I'm sure, because what's funny is that Horford and Williams are kind of like what Tice and Thompson could be at their best. It's probably a lot of similar offensive concepts and how they use them in different spots of the floor, how they can do like double screens or stagger screens where one guy sets a screen and then he kind of pops out towards the elbow to be a shooter. Second guy sets a screen, then he rolls to the rim. Celtics have a play called 11 where they run that action a lot at the top of the arc. The thing is, neither of those guys are that good at that stuff. Like Thompson is not that good of a roller. Tice is not that good of a shooter. He hits wide open shots mostly, but that's kind of it. He doesn't really put the ball on the floor that much unless he's rolling to the rim. Horford at least at his best, is amazing at that stuff. Like, he can be a real knockdown shooter who can attack when guys close out at him and be a really good playmaker. And Rob Williams, it looks like, is turning into a really good guy rolling to the rim, where you can lob it up to him, you can feed it to him, and he can take one dribble and try to dunk it on a guy. Like, he can do a lot of really good stuff, although he has a lot more room to grow. But so I think they're probably going to use those guys in similar ways to what they were doing with Tyson Thompson. It's just going to be a lot better.
Yeah, I'm way into that. And you can stretch it out even further too. I mean, Al Horford has, and look, I love Daniel Tice, and Tice, for stretches will have a great 3-point shooting, week, maybe 2 weeks. But there are times where he shoots 21% and you want to, gouge your eyes out. But Horford's a much bigger threat as just a pick and pop shooter. And he's look, he's a little bit older, but still that shot is still pretty good. And then Rob, as a roll man, like, just throw it up anywhere near the basket. He'll find a way to come down with it. So the spacing, I think, could be a little bit better, because you have to respect Al's shot a little bit more than Tice's. I mean, Tice got so many open looks. And, again, it just depended on the week, how much they were going in. Horford's got a much more respectable jump shot. Again, Jared says, and I agree with it, the fact that he can put the ball on the deck a little bit, take a couple of dribbles, and then maybe, find a backdoor cutter or just, take a pull-up shot from there as the guy goes by. That's fantastic. I love the playmaking from both of them too. Rob, for as many bonehead plays as he might make in the backcourt, as a front court passer, is quite tremendous. And I'm really looking forward to those two guys specifically working together, because I know Rob, the first time around, learned a lot from Al in terms of how to be professional, et cetera, et cetera. So I think Al can help him even more in that particular regard. And I think Rob, as a defender, does he make mistakes? Oh yeah. I mean, you'll go through the tape and you'll see, some, 3 good plays and maybe, 7 bad plays 2 years ago. Maybe that's been cut down to maybe 5 and 5. But Rob, can definitely be a guy that can make up for some defensive liabilities in certain spots. And, Al isn't the most fleet of foot guy anymore, but having a really spry 6'8", 6'9", Rob Williams near him, that's going to help a little bit. So I actually think, along with Jared, the double big lineup will succeed more this year than it did last year. Again, the depth is the real question there at the big man spot. I mean, Cantor, Hernan Gomez, I guess, and Grant. I mean, that just doesn't really do a lot for me, Jared. But this team may be saying, look, we're going to play small most of the time anyway. That's where our strength is. Why do we need to go, big crazy when we have the wings to compete? We have the guards to compete. We'll have serviceable guys, but we won't rely on them as much. Am I a little crazy here?
No, you're not crazy at all. And I think the big question is, how much are the Celtics wanting to go double big? Because that's like that is now, that double big now is what going small was 8 years ago, where it's like this thing that like only a few teams in the league do. It's kind of like a unique wrinkle, but we have been seeing more of it for sure in the last couple years, especially where teams that are really good with offensive rebounding tend to be like a nice little curveball against teams that play really small. So although I'm not really sure how much Al Horford's rebounding is going to be a factor at this point. I think it's Al Horford's value as the 4 is more his playmaking. And the question, I guess, is really, do they use him in the same way they used him before, where he's at the top of the arc and he's handing the ball off to guys cutting around the perimeter and things like that. And so I guess that's kind of like the big thing is we're going to see early on in the season, is Al Horford going to be a floor spacer and operating out of the post, or is the ball going to be in his hands at the top of the arc? And I think that will really determine what his role and what lineups he's going to be in.
All right, let's get to a couple of Twitter questions that stood out here from German, I guess, is the username anyway. German.
Herman, maybe? Is it maybe Hispanic?
Maybe. Could be Herman. I'm not sure. Well, you know what? From Mexico, I think. Let's see. What are your thoughts on a potential 8 to 9 man rotation for the beginning of the season? And have you heard what Jalen's been working on this offseason?
No on Jalen. I mean, I know that his thing has been trying to get better at passing when he hits the free throw line and making those reads, and he made some nice steps on that last year. But because he's recovering from the wrist injury, I just don't know what level of on-court work he's doing. And I've been unplugged from that stuff for the last month or so I got to plug back in on that a little bit more. As far as 8 to 9 man rotation, I mean, it's definitely a 9 to 10 man rotation for the regular season.
Yeah.
And that's going to be so the 6 guys we talked about between Richardson and Horford and the starters, Schroeder for sure. Who am I forgetting? I think at least Pritchard will probably almost always be in that rotation, and then one of Langford and Neesmith, and then we're going to see Grant Williams and Enes Kanter work their way into the rotation pretty often. Wancho, I don't think he's quite a regular, honestly. Just like he's too he can just be pushed around too easily. His shot's a little too erratic. He does this weird thing where he flicks his wrist completely to the side all the time on his shot when he's struggling with the shot, and it's like too obvious when he's not having a good shooting night. It's like you can like see like there's a signal that he's not having a good shooting night. And so as much as I really liked him as a prospect for years, I've been waiting for him to put it all together. I just haven't really seen it yet. And Minnesota did not go well for him last year, so I just don't really expect him to be cracking this rotation, unless because like I think Grant Williams is probably going to bring more to the table than Wancho does. I know I've seen a lot of people talk about Grant like he's barely going to make the roster as a candidate to get cut. I definitely have not gotten that indication, and I think he's been pretty solid for his first couple seasons when he's been on the floor. Like I think he's continuing to progress, and we'll see. I mean, if he's not like a good shooter and if he can't put the ball on the floor without turning it over, then obviously that's going to be an issue, and he's not going to crack the rotation if that's the case. And if he's still getting called for fouls constantly, that's also going to be an issue. But I think year 3, the refs are probably going to start letting him play with more physicality, because I did feel like a lot of the time the calls he was getting was that he would bump a guy with his chest while sliding with them into the lane, which you're supposed to be allowed to do, and they would still call him for a foul. So I feel like Grant is just going to benefit more than anybody from just getting a little bit more veteran treatment. So yeah, I mean, there's like 9 guys that I feel like are and it's a big question between Langford and Neesmith of which one each night gets in, but it's like there should be 9 guys that like seem like they're pretty clearly in their own, like they're on that dividing line of like clearly in the rotation, and everybody else it's like kind of a mix and match on a nightly basis.
We'll do one more from social media in the interest of time, and that is, Jared, can you elaborate on what you've heard from players regarding, quote, Brad's college offense? I've heard so little discussion about this, but I've maintained that Stevens has run the same offense since he got in the league and failed to adjust to suit to the Jays. Do you think that?
No, I don't think that's it. I think that last year their offense was more that it was just bogged down into spread pick and roll and isolation. And that was the irony. It was so like I think I had that in a report or two earlier this offseason about players complaining about that. Because that was like having people coming up to me and telling me like the college offense, like that was a phrase that people were using. And I definitely could see that maybe a little bit like a couple years ago when they were doing kind of more like handoff and pitch action stuff on the on the corners where they're kind of just like running. I'm sorry, on the perimeter where they're kind of just like running past each other and handing the ball off and stuff like that. Like just a little bit of the collegey feel to it, even though that's a lot of what's called Chicago offense, which is like a set that a lot of NBA teams run. But I think it was the frustration that last year it was just so much of kind of trying to clear out the court around Brown and Tatum, and just most guys just didn't really know what they're supposed to do, or they just weren't ready yet to do whatever it is that they're supposed to do. I think that's what frustrated everybody. And so that's going to change a lot this year because they have so many more veterans that do know what to do with the ball. So Jalen and Jason can trust their teammates more. And then when they are trusting their teammates, the offense is not going to die down nearly as frequently as it did last year.
All right, and let's see. All good. We'll take us out on this one. Evan mentioned this earlier, and we didn't have a chance to get to it earlier before the show. I know you've unplugged, obviously, in recent weeks, so I don't know how connected you are to this, but Gary Washburn, another good friend of ours on this program from the Boston Globe, wrote about how if Bradley Beal decides, and this, the constant speculation of what are they going to do if they can free up salary for a max guy and yada, yada, yada. It's not an imminent thing, but you're thinking ahead to next offseason. A lot of Celtics fans are. If Bradley Beal decides, you know what, as much as I love you, Jay, I'm going to stay in Washington. This is where I want to be. We're going to build something here. Zach LaVine right now is entering the final year of his contract, and Gary feels that LaVine could become this team's top target. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's always been presumed to be the next guy on the list if Beal is a possibility. And I don't know if necessarily Beal is ahead of LaVine on the list, but I certainly presume he is. But LaVine's this weird situation where He's entering the final year of his deal. I don't think he's going to turn down the Supermax from Chicago. Chicago's moves certainly indicate that they're going to do the Supermax for him. And Chicago, I mean, they've loaded up with long-term deals with veterans. That DeMar DeRozan contract made it pretty clear they cannot let Zach LaVine walk. And so if the Celtics aren't offering Jaylen Brown, which I would not offer for Zach LaVine, because it's the same thing with Brad Beal. It's like if you offer Jaylen Brown for one of those two guys, you probably get a better offensive player, not a better defensive player at this point. But like, I don't think that makes you that much better than where you are right now. It's like the only way that one of those trades makes sense is to send out, Rob Williams and whoever else in every draft pick for the rest of eternity, and then you have a big three. Like that's the only way that you're going to compete with teams like Brooklyn and Milwaukee and and Charlotte and whoever else becomes the juggernaut in the NBA. And so I just don't see Chicago making that kind of trade. Like there's no point in trading away Zach LaVine unless it's like already at the point of I'm not signing the Supermax, so you have to sign and trade me. But like I don't see that trade happening during the season.
Yeah, I wouldn't waste your breath on a clutch client going to Boston. Just gonna throw it out there. Wouldn't waste your time, guys.
Well, we'll be patient. It's coming, folks. Training camp, exhibition games, all of it. It's coming. The regular season not too far away. Soon enough, we'll have real basketball to dissect, not just rumors and reports and our own silly speculation. Of course, I say that based on Evan and I, not our wonderful guests like Jared Weiss right here from The Athletic. And you can make sure, as always, to follow his work. Be sure that you do so. A lot of great inside info there. Subscribe to The Athletic and be able to read those articles, because there is a lot of information out there you won't find anywhere else, and a lot of in-depth writing that you certainly don't find at so many places that are just out there aggregating at this point. It's one of the things that makes The Athletic special. Jared, thank you for making it a point to stop on back on your post-vacation tour.
Oh, this is the first place I had to go. I haven't even gone home yet. I'm still just at the studio for Celtics Beat.
I love it. Look, the man's hosted this show in the past. He knows where the bread's buttered.
That's it.
By the way,
next time, no robe. You gotta get the robe though. Robe's gotta come.
Yeah. Okay, I'll bring the robe out of retirement.
Only if Legends makes a robe.
There we go.
Tell me that thing wouldn't be soft as hell.
Okay, maybe I'm really old and just didn't realize it, but this is episode 426.
426.
This is a weekly show, so does that mean it's been on for like 426 weeks?
That is correct. The show's
so
been around
like almost a decade.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. Obviously I have not done all of them, and you guys have not, but it was, as we know, it was Larry for a long time. And maybe even Nick hosted it way back at the beginning. I don't remember. I'm trying to remember
like a dozen times back in the day, probably.
I want to say, I'm trying to remember. I don't know, Evan, maybe you remember. I'm trying to remember when I took over. It was, I mean, it's been like 2.5 years probably. So whatever the number is on that, like, I don't know.
I was thinking about this the other day in the car, just real quick. If my math is correct, our 500th episode should come out next year around the start of the season. Just a heads up on that, because we're at 426 now. I think we'll be a little bit into the season if I'm doing quick math in my head, but 500's coming next year, which should be like some sort of extravaganza at that point.
Yeah, we'll just have Larry host it. We'll get out of the way.
There we go.
Bring it back. Reward the OGs for the program. Be a real who's who. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Jared, pleasure, my friend.
Thanks, guys.
Celtics Beat returns next week. Until then.